Welcome to Boomer Bongo Boulevard. I'm Mike, just Mike. Along with me is my brother Ron, just Ron. And everything just flashed for a second there. I thought I was going blind, but I think it's just an optical illusion. And we're here to talk about all things Boomer. And Ron, one thing couldn't be more Boomer: westerns, cowboy
Absolutely.
shows. We were talking about detectives last week, and our friends Ron, our friends Ron, our friend
Well,
Steve
we
and
are friends,
Don.
but we're
We are
brothers as
here too,
well.
but. Steve, Don, and Hubert were listening, and maybe a couple of other people. But Steve called up, and he pointed out that we left out one big detective when we were talking about detectives last week, and I don't know how we overlooked Scooby Doo. Scooby
Oh,
Doo
how did we
had to
miss
be.
Scooby Doo and the whatever gang they are? They're
Oh, the
called
Scooby Gang
something. Yeah,
and the mystery machine. All
yeah,
that we
yeah.
left all that out,
Absolutely.
and left out my criticism of Scooby Doo, which is I don't understand the motivation of the bad guys in Scooby Doo. They
They
were
make no
they were
money. I mean,
Well, they had obviously, in most cases, invented some kind of a robot that one or two times was 10 feet tall, that could run, sprint, talk, even think a little, and yet they were wasting their time trying to get a $25,000 treasure, and they probably spent
can't follow that. Yeah.
$40,000 in development. But Scooby would still solve the mystery, and of course Shaggy along. So we left out Scooby Doo, but our apologies to Scooby, and thanks, Steve, for pointing that out. But I think now we're all caught up on our detective. And by the way, we talked about how great the songs to detective shows are, Ron.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
oh my gosh, and what detective song is any better than the Scooby Dooby Doo, Where Are You song?
That's good.
And so here we go. We're all up to speed now on our
It's
detectives,
iconic.
and we are. It is. It's beyond iconic. Whatever beyond iconic is, that's what it is. But we're talking about westerns this time, and golly, back in the '60s, the '50s, on into the '70s, the western dominated television. If you went to the movies, it dominated the movies. If you Um, I mean, entertainment was cowboys and horses and saddle horns and whatever else went along with it. Pistols, six guns, right?
You know it.
Oh, have you got what do you got there? That's a cap gun, obviously.
Yeah, a little cap gun.
Don't point that. You know when we were kids though, the guns didn't have the little orange tabs on them.
No, they did not.
You could just put one by the bed and probably frighten anybody into thinking you had a real. And some of those guns looked very real
They
and
did
were
indeed. As
I'm there you go. And you had to
this
have a
is my
hat.
best hat. This is my Stetson.
Really,
Yeah.
I do not have a Stetson. I do have a couple of cowboyish hats, straw hats with big brims, but
Hey,
I
I
don't really
gotta
have a
go all
cowboy
the
hat.
way here. Can't be wearing a cowboy hat and a Batman shirt.
What do you got?
Yeah, you gotta put on a cowboy shirt. Gotta do
Oh,
that.
okay. You got a cowboy shirt.
Yeah.
I've got
And,
I've got I've got a couple of shirts that would pass for a cowboy shirt, I
yeah.
guess, but nothing like that. That's actually got all the fancy buttons on the
Yeah,
sleeves,
you
and
gotta have buttons and
fancy's
everything.
kind of a cowboy word too. That's fancy. That's kind of fancy.
That is
You know,
kind of fancy.
yeah, he's a fancy boy.
Got them pearl buttons and everything.
Oh man,
Now you live out in Texas, you gotta have a cowboy hat and a cowboy shirt.
I,
Now
I,
come
do,
on.
do you have your boots on? I know you have boots.
What do you
Don't. You got them on, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Let's see if you can see this here.
I thought
Is
of everything. You should have just.
there
Yeah.
you
Wow.
go.
Yeah.
I
You
even put my
got them.
pants on so you can see the whole boot.
Yeah. So you can see the whole thing. That's how
Right.
Roy Rogers did it.
Yeah, gotta do
Roy
that.
Rogers always had those fancy boots, and he'd stuff his trousers, his pants down in them so you could see them. And I think the Lone Ranger didn't have fancy boots, though. Lone Ranger was
He
more
said black boots,
basic
but
guy.
he did have them stuff down there because basically the Lone Ranger wore tights.
Yeah, he really was fancy.
Yeah, he
He was
was
a
fancy.
super fancy
He
cowboy.
was a fancy boy.
What was your favorite Western, TV
Oh, I love
Western film?
Gunsmoke.
Oh yeah, yeah. Matt
That was the
Dillon.
one I watched the most. I mean, that sucker was on for 20 years, but so it lasted. It started in '55, and it'd been on for 10 years when I was born in '65, just on the
Yep.
cusp of the boomer timeline, and I watched it, until 1975 when it went off the air.
James Arness riding that big Appaloosa.
Oh, you bet.
Had the gunfight at the beginning, and they changed it eventually because the networks went all, let's don't be so violent. So they stopped having a gunfight at the beginning and opened with Matt riding that Appaloosa
Speaking of
across the
Matt
plain.
Dillon, I actually found a very interesting take on the Gunsmoke intro, and I'm going to share that with you right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I ran across this earlier today, and let me. Let me give me.
You're going to drop your camera, aren't you?
No, I'm not going to drop my camera.
You sure?
But I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to show it this way. How about that?
What do you got there? Can we see? What are you doing? Oh yeah. Got to hold it steady. And Matt lets the other guy shoot first too. That's what I like.
Yeah.
He's nice. He's a nice sheriff.
Oh no!
Oh, what?
Oops,
man. And that was the final episode of Gunsmoke.
It was.
Matt finally went down. Yes, so.
Poor Matt, man. Just
that's why the internet is absolutely worthless. It's absolutely worthless. It just gives an outlet for people who would make something like that.
Yeah.
I liked how Matt always let the other guy shoot first in the duel. And then finally late in his career, Matt got shot. He finally got on target.
He was a little slow that day.
Yeah, he was a little slow that day. He had a quick.
Yeah. He had a bad day in Dodge. He didn't dodge.
I guess what? That was probably most people's favorite Western, Gunsmoke. Along with if it wasn't Gunsmoke, it was Bonanza.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't Bonanza, later on, it was that clone of Bonanza where they reversed the parent and made it a mother instead of a father.
Yeah.
And the Big Valley, Valley and Heath and
go Heath, go
Heath, go. And, our brother tells a story of one day walking into the barbershop when he was a kid, just waiting for his turn. In typical barbershop, I guess like you have all over the country, and he was
not anymore,
not anymore, but for a while, yeah. Now it's styling lounges, but they had a TV in the corner playing whatever was on in the afternoon. It happened to be an episode of the Big Valley, and there was some really old dude sitting in the chair getting his hair cut, and everything was kind of quiet, and the fan was droning, and a little small talk from the barber among the various folks, and all of a sudden the guy who was having his haircut, who hadn't said a word, but had been watching the Big Valley on the TV the whole time, leaned forward and yells, "Go, Heath, go!" That's one of the funniest things, just to imagine some guy breaking the tableau.
I met Lee Majors a few years back, and
it
was all I could do to keep from going, "Go, Heath, go!"
Oh, yeah, and that's too long a story to tug on his ear.
I did crack him up, though. I did crack him up.
It would. Did you tell him?
No, I did crack him up. I didn't do the Heath
that's
thing,
right.
But
that's right. You did a takeoff on the $6 million. Of course, Lee Majors was a $6 million man.
Because he, of course, was a $6 million man as well.
Right.
And I had this old thing where I joined the $6 million man Bionic Action Club back in like 1974, and I still have all the stuff, like the picture and that was sent. Right. You had to wait 6 to 8 weeks for, and all that, and the little card that says I was a member in good standing with the Bionic Action Club, and it had my name typed out. I guess somebody some underling meticulously typed my name out, and I pulled that card out and showed him. I said, I flashed this thing when I first got here, thinking it would get me to the front of the line, but I said it was to no avail, Lee. Because he was just sitting there and just basically signing stuff, and he looked up and he went and started So I got to
Had to have a
laugh at
laugh.
that. So that was cool.
But and then so as it turned out, the card and waiting 6 weeks was worth absolutely nothing to you,
Yeah.
except for the
Yeah.
opportunity years later to make Lee Majors laugh.
Exactly. To make Lee
So,
Majors laugh.
yeah, which
Hey,
made it
honey,
all worth
signed
it.
my cover to my. I brought my. You know, they had all the pictures and stuff, but I brought. I took the cover off one of my $6 Million Man DVDs, and so I've got one of the covers signed by Lee Majors,
Good
and
for
he
you.
signed it, Colonel Steve Austin, Lee Majors.
Hey, that's the
I'm
way
like,
to do it.
yes.
Always knew I liked Lee
Oh yeah.
Majors.
Oh, he was
Um,
great.
Ron, we've been talking a little bit about this before we went ahead with the show topic, and I figured out something, and I don't know that I've ever heard anybody say this before, but I was categorizing these various westerns: Bonanza, Big Valley, Gunsmoke, Maverick, Laredo, were
Mhm.
comedic westerns, along with Alias Smith and Jones, and so they had a humorous bent. Some did, and Bonanza was kind of actually well known for occasionally having humorous episodes as well. And they, at least a couple times a season, they would just, everybody remembers the one about Hoss and the leprechauns,
Oh yeah.
and they were just so that humor was definitely an angle that they took. So you had, but basically you had these serious series where they were sort of surreal. Everybody wore the same clothes all the time, so you could tell one character from the other.
Oh
And
yeah.
then you had some that were a little more serious, a little more realistic, like Gunsmoke. Even though everybody wore the same costume every week in Gunsmoke too, Miss Kitty would change it up with a dress. But um, the so you had the serious, and then you had the comedic, and then you had the realistic, and then you had the kids
Yeah.
cowboy shows like the Lone Ranger
Yeah.
and Roy Rogers and Gene Autry and Annie Oakley. They were definitely designed and pointed at kids, but I couldn't really quite figure out really how you identified them in a simple way. And then I realized that in the cowboy shows aimed at kids, the hero always wore two guns. And that was just an
Yeah, that's true.
instantaneous way
Yeah.
you knew it was a kid show.
Yeah.
If you were hopping channels and didn't know
Mhm.
anything, you said, I want to see a show a western that kids liked back in the '60s,
Yeah.
and you see somebody wearing two guns, it was a kid show. The Lone
Yeah.
Ranger had two guns. Roy
That's true.
Rogers had two guns.
Well, there was even a
Annie Oakley,
comic book cowboy, the Two Gun Kid.
Two Gun Kid
Yeah.
had two. Yeah, yeah. There were cowboy comic books
Yeah.
back in those days. Marvel had them. When we talked about comic books, by the way,
Rawhide
this is
Kid, I
episode.
think, was Marvel, and I think maybe Two Gun Kid was too, or maybe he was DC. I don't know.
Right. He was
I didn't.
no. Two Gun Kid was Marvel.
Yeah.
Two Gun Kid was Rawhide Kid was
Yeah.
Marvel. Marvel really got into the
Get
weeds
into the
almost with
cowboy
the
stuff. Yeah.
cowboy books. Yeah.
Now there was
Um,
something I was gonna insert in here when you were talking about Bonanza and the way they dressed and stuff like this. And I always found this interesting in the movie Django Unchained. Of course, everybody
right.
knows Quentin Tarantino loves to do callbacks to stuff back when he was a kid, and he and I are almost exactly the same age. So we went through and watched all the same things and everything. But through the second half of the movie, Jamie Foxx is dressed identical to Little Joe.
Oh,
The green jacket, the tan pants, the tan hat with the same band,
well,
everything.
now Joe changed his hat a couple times. He would
But
go from
during
dark
the
hat
most of the series,
to
though, he had that.
right.
During the at least the last 10 or so years,
Right.
that's he looked the same. The green jacket,
Right. Right.
and the kind of a pink shirt and the tan pants, and the pink shirt was big because I was just watching Gunsmoke today, and Matt had the tan vest, the kind of salmon shirt.
Matt had a costume.
Tan, yeah, he did, and the hat changed some. I actually saw one where he had a black hat. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, black hat. It was a black and white one. And he had a black hat.
There had to be a story behind that.
And it must have been.
Costuming
But,
couldn't find his
yeah.
hat that day.
Yeah.
I swear,
Or I guess they didn't think about it as much in, the black and white. They tended to maybe give them a little more freedom. But, when color came along, they loved to have like a color palette for every show.
Yeah,
You know, if
yeah.
you notice that it was a lot more freedom in the black and white, and you go to then when they did the transition to color, it was like everything was day glow, and you know they
Well,
really had to pull
they did that,
themselves back. You know,
made it so easy to edit. You could always edit something in from
yeah,
another episode if you needed to, or some
absolutely.
shot didn't work out. You know, the thing that I like to think about back in those days, if you were going to be an actor, say you were some kid that lived in Ohio like Roy Rogers did, um, or just anywhere in the United States, and you were thinking, boy, I'd like to grow up. Or our age, you're like, I'd like to grow up and be in a cowboy TV show, or I'd like to be an actor, or I'd just like to be an actor. You better go get some riding lessons
Oh,
because there were
absolutely.
so many westerns. If you couldn't ride, that was 80% of the shows at one time.
Oh,
So
absolutely, it
you
was.
know, riding lessons were a big deal out in Hollywood. I don't know what lessons you would take now. I guess dancing and of course, cowboy might have to dance every once in a while if you went to the big dance.
True.
You know, to pick up the Miss Emmalou or somebody like that. You got the modern westerns too
Yeah.
that are still around. Although boy, they're not nearly as common. But in the '70s, early
To me, the
'80s,
modern western started with uh, uh,
well,
Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid in 1969. The more
yeah.
gritty kind of, and that led to yet another show. And I'm going to play the theme song right now. You will probably recognize it immediately.
What if I don't? This could be embarrassing. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Alias Smith and Jones.
Yep.
Alias Smith and
Yep.
Jones. Well, I was thinking when I was saying modern western, I was thinking more set in the days of cars and airplanes and old Sky King, which was a
Mm-hmm.
kids show. Now Sky King did not wear two guns, but it was aimed at kids. And I don't
Yep.
know how they. I guess he had two wings on his plane, I
Yeah.
suppose. And but I was thinking like McLeod and Longmire.
Yeah. That show right there was almost, as far as I know, was based almost entirely on Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid. I mean, it was like
Oh,
came out the
Alias Smith and
same
Jones.
year and
Yeah,
everything. You
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
And that did kind of turn the page, I think, with TV westerns because everything was more of a fantasy type thing, and that
Right.
punched a lot more kind of a realistic kind of a turn to things.
Well, and they made sure the cowboys had long hair,
Yeah,
so they had that little hippie side to
exactly.
them.
Yeah,
And
because they knew younger people were watching television, and they were trying to bring that group in. And that's about the time when they started trying to get rid of the old shows like Beverly Hillbillies and Mayberry RFD and
it's kind of
all
had.
the older skewing stuff.
I was still thinking of, boy, Yellowstone recently
Yeah,
is a modern western, Justified, Walker Texas Ranger, which
yeah,
Chuck Norris took, and then
yep,
it's been redone over the last 4 years by Padalecki, that yeah,
yeah,
actor. I've forgotten his
mhm,
first name, but they even brought Walker back.
yeah,
And so the cowboy in a Jeep, he rarely rode a horse.
yeah,
So I guess a horse isn't really essential for a Western field. Western, you got to wear those boots, though, like
yeah.
you had on.
Oh yeah,
You got
you got to
those
do that.
boots. Got to have the boots. Got to have the cowboy hat. Got to have the yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, and kind of a drawl and a slow approach and
Absolutely.
a little Western wisdom and maybe a Native American character thrown in here or there. Would you consider Daniel Boone a Western? The old, Daniel Boone, Fess Parker.
Um, well, it's outside. They rode horses, and
A
it was
little.
in
They
that
mostly walk.
genre, that general genre. But it was more of a, it was I don't know, more of a period piece slash
Yeah, they didn't.
western because it was during the Revolutionary War, and
Right,
because they were always fighting the British,
right.
and but
Didn't
but
really
there
fall into
were
a category.
Indians, and there were
Yeah,
guys wearing buckskin and cowboy hats, and
yeah.
well,
Didn't
no,
have the
not really
six gun.
cowboy hats, mostly buckskin, and yeah,
Didn't have the six gun though.
no, they
Didn't
had
have six gun.
muskets.
And yeah, they had that muzzle loader and
Yeah,
maybe a pistol that
yeah, muzzle
was a
loader
one
pistols.
shot.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
absolutely.
I don't know. I just some things don't fall. It's
Kind
like
of, but
Jimmy
yeah,
Buffett's
it kind
music.
of didn't fit the. And they had, he had the tomahawk, of course.
Yeah.
Where the guy who played Mingo, Ed Ames, who, by the way, I've inherited quite a collection of Ed Ames albums because my late mother-in-law was quite the fan of Ed Ames as a singer, and I've probably got about 8 Ed Ames albums who played Mingo.
Have you ever Have you ever played one?
I have not played one of them. I have like 8, 9. I mean, I've
Why
got
did I
tons
know
of
the
them.
answer to that question?
And yeah. But it's just an interesting thing to own. I should have brought a few of them in here. That would have been a good
See, well,
visual.
you know what we've started doing with our albums, and we have a record player like you do, and you play them.
Yeah.
It's nice to play the old records
Oh yeah.
with the grooves and all the scratches and the pops, but we don't play them as much as we do
Yeah.
CDs or just listen to the radio. It's just a little more trouble to deal with them.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I hate to run my needle down, which I'm prone to do if I get into playing the records too much. But we use them a little bit around the living room just for a little deck. We'll put a couple on top of the piano.
Yeah.
Like at Christmas, you get a Christmas album and take the album cover with, of course, it's got the album in it, and set it up somewhere and use it for decoration. So you could use Ed Ames for a room decoration. You could,
I've actually
lean him
got
up on a
couple
bookshelf.
framed up and hanging in my living room. I've got my autographed Headquarters album with Mike Nesmith's autograph in a frame, and I also have a Harry Belafonte album cover frame because it's just a cool looking album cover, and it's kind of hanging because I have my records are. I have like a cubby over there and have all my albums, and then I have like music related stuff, kind of up above that, and it looks pretty cool.
Survey time.
All right.
Who's your favorite among Roy Rogers, Gene Autry, and the Lone Ranger? And we'll throw in Andy Ranger. Lone Ranger? Why?
Come on, man.
Great theme song.
I mean, Lone Ranger is like, to me, the Lone Ranger was the first superhero.
That's what he's. Now he's the ancestor to what more modern superhero? Do you know?
Let's see. It is the Green Hornet.
The Green Hornet, yeah.
Yes.
He's supposed to be what? The Green Hornet's great uncle, something like that.
I have him all queued up right here. Here he is.
Oh. That's so good.
I love it.
Got Tonto riding on Silver. That's another thing. Kid shows, the horse always had a name on the kid shows. If it wasn't a kid show,
pulling out the gun and
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Lone Ranger. Hey, just pull out.
Lone Ranger could shoot the gun out of people's.
Yeah.
Oh, and something else.
That's what he usually did. He didn't ever shoot anybody. He usually shot their gun out of their hand.
He was a great shot, and they shot guns out of people's hands. The kids shows did because they didn't want to, I guess, have the hero actually killing people.
And he had his secret silver mine so he could make his silver bullets.
Right, and Lone Ranger in a fight never lost his hat. Roy Rogers never lost his hat in a fight.
Nope.
Gene Autry never lost his hat in a fight. Those guys didn't lose their hats in a fight. And in a more grown-up Western, they would occasionally lose their hat, even when they were riding a horse, or even appear without their hat. Yep. And of course, the Lone Ranger always very politely would take his hat off when he went inside, or when he was he'd tip his hat to the ladies.
Well,
we learned a lot of
manners. Tonto was totally equal to the Lone Ranger. He treated him as an equal. They were partners. They were buddies.
Did they cut?
He was not like his valet or anything like that, and didn't have to pretend like he was. I mean, Tonto was a bad A, just like the Lone Ranger.
Did he cut him in on the silver mine because Tonto did not have silver bullets?
I guess Tonto was just accurate without them.
But
I don't know that he didn't use them though.
Why didn't the Lone Ranger?
Why wouldn't he use them? I would think he would. I guess they never really touched on that though, did they?
No, I just don't think he cut. Tonto
I would think that he would, but who knows?
No, I don't think they're as equal as you think, Ron. I think the Lone Ranger kept the upper hand on a few things, like how much money was in his wallet. I think Tonto was on the payroll. That's what I think, and he worked for the Lone Ranger. They got along well, but I think I just do not trust any dude that's walking around wearing a mask. I don't 100% trust him. And Tonto, by the way, did not get to wear the mask either.
No, he did not.
Why didn't Tonto need a secret identity? Huh?
I don't know. I guess he thought Tonto could blend in a lot better, or well, he was supposed to be dead, so that's why he wore one.
Oh, is that right, Tonto?
Well, because it was like the big massacre and all that stuff, and he was the Lone Ranger that was left.
Right. Oh, I knew the Lone Ranger. Yeah.
Yeah, because Tonto saved him.
Yeah, but Tonto wasn't supposed to be dead, right?
No, but Lone
Okay.
Ranger was.
I
Because
think
that's what they
you're
talk
giving
about they think that he's dead or whatever. They say that, I think, in the theme.
Clayton Moore, the
Yeah.
one and only. I think there's a curse of the Lone Ranger because every time movies try to do a Lone Ranger movie, it's always terrible.
Because they don't
Clayton
do it
Moore.
right.
Yeah,
They
they
make
don't.
it, well, like that last one they made the Lone Ranger like he was a moron,
Yeah, well,
and it's like, you can't do
and he
that.
wasn't.
Yeah.
No, Lone Ranger was a brilliant guy.
Yeah.
Roy Rogers had the best horse, though,
Oh, yeah.
by far.
Without a doubt.
Trigger was the finest horse, the fastest horse in the history of the world, too. He could catch any horse.
He was a smoked Secretariat.
I think they should have had an episode where, on Roy's TV show or in one of Roy's mini
Yeah.
movies where they took Trigger to the Kentucky Derby and won. Or if Trigger was too old, maybe like one of the horses in the Kentucky Derby had a bomb hidden in his saddle, and Roy burst out onto the track and catches the Kentucky Derby winner and diffuses the bomb while they're
That would
riding.
be
That would
awesome.
have just been the guy. See, I should write that script, but it just wouldn't be appreciated.
It's a little
today.
late, but
Yeah. I'm looking at we haven't even talked about Rawhide, which is one of the great ones. Clint Eastwood, man, Clint Eastwood,
come on.
isn't that a bridge program? Clint Eastwood is in Rawhide, one of the great westerns, and then Clint Eastwood becomes maybe the epitome of the
most
cowboy
iconic movie cowboy maybe ever.
Except the only other person would be close or in the same category. I guess John Wayne's bigger.
Yeah.
But
but
they're almost side by side. They're almost side by side. But nobody else can touch them. Nobody else can touch them.
As far as being a just bad
cowboy,
it's Clint and it's John Wayne, and there's nobody else.
Nobody else. Tom Selleck
is even
Tom
in the
Selleck is
ballpark.
Tom Selleck's kind of made a little run at it for a movie or two, but he just never stuck with it. I think Tom could have maybe.
That's like minor leagues compared to John Wayne.
It's
not even close.
And but the Rawhide, it might be, if you were just going to talk about one program or movie or anything, when you're talking about the Western, it almost have to be Rawhide because of the presence of Clint Eastwood in the Rawhide cast, and it had a great cast anyway. All those guys actually look like cowboys probably would look more gaunt, look like they had missed a few meals. I mean, James Arness looked like he'd never missed a meal.
You talk about bad A cowboys. You're talking about Clint, you're talking about John Wayne, you're talking about James Arness. That's three dudes that could choke you out more than likely. That's some big guys.
Tommy Lee Jones, Robert Duvall, and Lonesome Dove are iconic characters, but and Robert Duvall has done quite a few westerns, and they're pretty good westerns, and easily the best actor among actors that have done a lot of westerns. He and Tommy Lee Jones probably dead heat there, but just never committed 100% to him.
Costner's underrated cowboy.
You're right. Costner might be
a lot of really good cowboy type movies.
Well, supposedly his current movie is
it's supposed to be good.
Very good. I just haven't seen it yet. Maybe I will one day soon. Sam Elliott.
Well, if we're going to talk about cowboys in movies, I got to mention a guy who only played a cowboy once that I know of, but two guys in this movie, and it's one of my favorite movies. Man, here's an underrated cowboy, Kurt Russell.
Kurt Russell.
Whoo, man, he's a great cowboy.
Well, actually, Ron, he's at least one other. I think he's been in a few. He was in. I haven't seen it,
but this one called Tomahawk, and it's like
Bone Tomahawk.
Bone Tomahawk. It's like, whoa, man.
Yeah. Have you seen that?
Ooh, yes.
Yeah, it's a horror cowboy, and I know. Every cowboy fan should see it at least once, and every horror fan should see it at least once.
Man. That will stick with you for a while.
A guy we're leaving out as far as iconic cowboys, and he would fit right into this, but also kind of comical in a way too, is Chuck Connors as the rifleman. Maybe the greatest opening of any Western with the Winchester rapid fire and at the beginning of the show, and then the the kind of
Yep.
abbreviated rifleman thing. There you go. Yeah, maybe 13 shots, 13 or 14
Yeah.
shots.
Yep.
And how did that sound, by the way?
Pretty good.
Yeah, thanks. And Chuck Connors was, had been a professional athlete like James Arness.
Yep.
All these. John
And
Wayne,
who did he play for?
Boston Celtics, and then
Yes,
pitched for the
sir.
Los Angeles Dodgers.
Yep.
First NBA player to shatter a backboard was Chuck
Oh
Connors.
wow. See, I
And
did not know that. Pretty sweet.
he, that's kind of the if you're going to know any Chuck Connors trivia, that's probably the trivia to know. Once you
Best
know
one to
that
know.
he's a professional, he and you know what I always loved about the Rifleman? Go back and watch him. Oh, and his they made no pretense. They're like, look, this is relatively low budget Western. We're not going to have a wardrobe actually sew up jeans like the old boys wore. Chuck just pulled on a pair of Wranglers with a big old W on the pocket. And he's wearing them
Don't
back
worry
in the
about it.
1800s, and it just cracks me up when I see it. It's maybe I wonder if Wrangler paid them for that. I mean, that's
They
maybe the
may
earliest
have.
product placement I've ever seen.
You never know.
And I mean, have you never seen it and noticed the W on his pocket?
I have never noticed that. That's great. I love
Oh,
that.
just watching any episode, sooner or later, you'll before the episode's over, you'll see a shot of Lucas McCain walking into the saloon, he didn't walk into the saloon much, but going in the sheriff's office or something. They'll follow him in. You'll see that W on his back pocket, and it is definitely a pair of modern cut Wrangler jeans, and probably just an old pair of I don't know what's probably just a standard pair of boots too. I always did kind of admire that about these TV westerns and the movies as well. The wardrobe looked to me fairly authentic.
Yeah, not bad.
You know, they just mostly had non-labels on clothing, and a lot of things looked fairly homemade. And
I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up. I got this in here. This is one of my favorite toys when I was growing up, and it fits right in here. And I brought them in here just for this. Here's my Johnny West on his horse Thunderbolt.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I like that.
And old Johnny, let's see. I don't have his
Does Johnny
gun
have two
handy,
guns?
but Johnny has a quick draw.
Does he have a 2-gun belt?
Yeah, I got a belt somewhere, I think.
Are the 2 guns in it?
Yeah, he doesn't have a 2-gun belt. He's
okay.
1 gun. But I've got some of that somewhere. There's Johnny, and let's see. Here's one of his pals here. Call him Chief Cherokee. Let me get his headdress up a little bit where you can see his face.
I remember Chief Cherokee.
There he is on his Palomino. Got that little Joe horse there.
Yeah, the Palom. Yeah.
Yeah. I still have a lot of equipment and stuff. And
we got to save that for the. We're going to do another version of the Christmas show over in the fall.
Yeah, I had to bring them out for the cowboy show. Out of my, I have my big glass case out in the garage, where I have all my cool old toys.
This the thing that I like to point out too is that there are 2 westerns that were on for years that had to be the most grown up westerns ever run, because I've never run into any kid that ever watched them. The High Chaparral and the Virginian.
Oh yeah.
So I guess it must have been full blown adults keeping that on the air.
Yeah.
And for the life of me, I can't figure out why kids didn't like them. I mean, they were westerns, but they just struck me as being a little too talky. And anyway, I've got a nomination for the unique award for westerns, and I think this one stands head and shoulders above all the other westerns as being a standalone western. Do you know the one I'm going to say?
Let's see.
Kung Fu.
Kung Fu, absolutely,
right,
man.
Don't you agree? Nothing else like it,
without a doubt. Yeah, that's the most different. Yeah, that is the most different.
No
western
guns
ever. Kung
no
Fu.
Horse,
Yep.
No cowboy hat, no shoes.
Yep.
Throughout all the conventions, didn't fall into any of the stereotypes. Yet it is undoubtedly a western. The bad guys lost, the good guys won, and
they taught you a lesson too.
Oh, taught you learned a lesson. You got some philosophy.
You
You
got it all day long, man.
all day long they'd go back and have those China memories from his training in China. Our dad used to call it going back. Oh,
Going
it's
back
going
to
back to
China.
China now. Yeah, going back to China.
Okay,
And
let's see. We man, you said that. I gotta play that, man. Come on.
oh, you're trying to find it.
Here we go.
Hey, here we go. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
It just makes you feel all peaceful.
Quite John Kane.
Listen, and he talked a peaceful game, but he also managed to whip somebody's butt every episode.
Oh, it was always great. Right near the end, he would always, yeah, he'd pound
Bad guy.
somebody.
I don't think he ever killed anybody, but
Yeah.
he twists them around and wreck them. I mean, just think about it. I mean,
Yeah, the funny
no
thing was
hat,
David
no
Carradine didn't
gun,
know
no
any
shoes.
kung fu because originally they got the idea from Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee wanted to do it,
Right.
and they just didn't think the time was right for to have, I guess, an Asian lead a television show at the time, and they kind of stole his idea, which
Yeah,
happened
of
a lot
course.
in music and TV and movies and everything back then, and they ended up getting David Carradine, who kind of sort of had that look,
Yeah,
you
he
know,
did.
and but the cool thing is David Carradine, who did not know any kung fu, actually learned it over the years
Right,
and got
right,
into it.
right.
He was like he really got touched by the show and kind of really got into that.
I did not miss many episodes.
No, it
Always
was
an
a great
interesting
show.
show.
It came up for 4
Oddly,
years, and it was an amazing show.
well, it reminded me a bit of an, and I don't know why. Maybe I can talk through it here, but it reminded me of Paladin with Richard Boone.
Yeah,
Paladin had
it kind of
his.
was that type show. Yeah,
It was different. It stood alone. Nobody else really liked Paladin. Highly educated, and I guess another one that falls in that, the Wild Wild West,
yeah,
which was kind of a secret agent western.
yeah. It
I guess we
was.
should talk about this a little more, but I guess we need to wrap it up, Ron. I mean,
That's what I was just thinking. Oh, we're getting on down the road there.
well, and I mean, we didn't even get to talk about Wanted Dead or Alive
Yeah.
with Nick Adams.
Well, we can always
Uh,
come back and revisit this
I'm,
subject again.
I'm sorry, it was
It's
Steve
a,
McQueen.
a
Steve McQueen. Yeah,
fertile farmland of fiction.
we can.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun talking about thinking about the old westerns. And
Yeah.
I do have a song of the week, Ron,
All right.
written by Dale Evans,
All
sung by
right.
Roy Rogers and Dale Evans. Happy Trails, released in 1958. And you know how long ago that was? They released it as a 78 RPM record
Oh,
and a
sweet.
45 RPM record. And
Actually, my favorite version of that song is by Van Halen.
right, I actually
I
had a
love
note
that.
here. It was covered by Van Halen.
Bombadita. David Lee Roth.
Van Halen covered. And you know who else
Almost every
covered it?
bar in America played that when they were ready to close up.
Well, and yeah, and not a bad idea. I mean,
Yeah.
what else are you supposed to do
Yeah.
but leave when they start playing that? But somebody else, in doing a little research, Janis Joplin did a private recording of Happy
Oh,
Trails
wow.
and had it delivered to John Lennon on his birthday. But in between the time that she recorded it and John Lennon received it, Janis Joplin died of
Oh, wow.
Janis Joplin died of a drug overdose. So when John Lennon received it, she had already died.
Oh,
and
man.
I don't think it's ever been released. But people have heard it, and it's legendary. So
Yeah.
Janis Joplin singing "Happy Trail,"
Cool.
and might have
We
been the
should
last
find
thing.
that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's maybe I haven't really looked on YouTube. Maybe it's floating around on
Yeah,
YouTube.
you never know.
So, at any rate, Ron,
Hey, here we go
it's
again.
time to say goodbye to
Yes,
Boomer
it
Bongo
is.
Boulevard.
All right.
Okay.
I'll.
I'm guessing you did not have a song of the week. You told me
No,
you
I
didn't.
didn't.
Yes, okay. That's a good one, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I was
I'm gonna
impressed
hack
you
this
knew
up
about
and I'll
that
call you
Van
back.
Halen. Okay.